Uh-oh. Oh, gosh. See? You did it again. Woo! You're going to do it by a landslide.
Absolutely so, yes. As long as...
What are we going to talk about today?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Just give me a second. Here. Yes. Good morning. Good morning, Timothy, and good morning, everybody watching us on February 15th. This is Sunday here in Japan and Saturday night in other parts of the world. Well, this is Japanese Politics One-on-One, episode 262, when we talk about Japanese politics, the latest events. And I think that today we're going to dedicate quite a lot of time on the historic victory of Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and the LDP, and, well, let's say the mastery with which she transferred her popularity to her party, and what it means for Japan as well, because many people are observing the country right now. There have been talks between the Japanese government and the American government as well, and there are so many things going on. But, Timothy, I'm not going to do your work here, so it's on you. And once again, good morning.
Good morning, Maya. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Welcome new members too. Our audience is actually beginning to really grow very quickly. It's probably because of you, Maya, but also I think
Yeah.
people are noticing we have a female prime minister and just the explosion of events that are going on in Japan. Japan is a significant nation in the global context, but it's been rather quiet and rather kind of timid, I think you might be able to say, but it is really roaring to action now. And wow, what a week we've had! Last Sunday's result, everybody is familiar with it. It wasn't just an election win; it was a structural reset, and that is the important thing to focus on. The LDP didn't just squeak through; it cleared 2/3. That is an amazing thing. The LDP hasn't had this position ever. Actually, the closest they've come is maybe 300 seats. It's 310 seats in the House that consists of 465 members. They've got 2/3. This is unprecedented, and it's unprecedented for a lot of reasons. But I think, like you were saying, the magical Takaichi and the mastery that she exemplified, a lot of it had to do with just timing and good luck, but she really did play her cards really well now. And the supermajority that the LDP now welds inside the Diet holds real meaning for how things are going to happen going forward. So it means that all of the committee seats, there are maybe 20 committee chairs within the parliament. They will all be dominated by LDP members. It changes how the control of bills move through. In the past 3 administrations, the LDP has not been able to cleanly push things through without arduous negotiations with the opposition parties. The opposition parties are just a shadow of themselves. The LDP holds 75%. That means the opposition party holds 25%, and the largest bloc only holds 10%. So if you're thinking of rattling the cage and upsetting the gorilla, you're going to have a hard time when you only weld 10% and maybe cobbling together an alliance with one of the other opposition parties. Still, you only have 25, 24%. It just changes everything. It changes how the budget is going to be passed. It changes how the bureaucracy reads the political momentum. And that's important too, because there's always this fight between, the Nagata-cho and Kasumi-gaseki, who holds sway. And very clearly, it is now in the hands of Nagata-cho. And more importantly, it kind of focuses how the world sees Japan too. I mean, the prime minister was just noted by one of the major international publications. Takaichi is the most powerful woman in the world right now. I don't know if you can say that, but it is something that that does make you take note of it. What I'd like to talk about today, and then we can get into the Q&A afterwards. I'll talk for about 30 minutes today, Maya. But what the numbers actually mean inside the parliament, what the Osaka results mean, and what that signals for Osaka, what is the economic story and the yen and the consumption tax. There's a discussion on reducing the consumption tax on foodstuffs and what the bond market constraint actually is with regard to the yen. The US trade framework, Mr. Akazawa is in Washington D.C. I think he's returning today. He's in his 11th face-to-face discussion with Commerce Secretary Lutnick. There are some BOJ appointments that are coming up. The Prime Minister will meet with the governor of the BOJ, Mr. Ueda, tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So a lot of people are watching what is going to come out of that. And then the China test. There was a fishing vessel that broached Japan's exclusive economic zone south of Nagasaki, not in a place that's in disputed territory. It's clearly recognized as exclusively within Japan's control. It was breached, and the vessel was boarded. The captain was arrested. It's a potential explosive issue, but I'd like to talk about that a little bit more, and then maybe we can get into it in the Q&A. Also, the ongoing controversy with China and tourists and the importation of foodstuffs and agricultural products, that still remains. And it's something that, the finance secretary, Katayama, is in a really difficult place. She needs to bring in more revenue when the prime minister is saying we're going to diminish revenue, we're going to, reduce the amount of revenue that we're coming in with this consumption tax idea. It looks like it's been a promise that the LDP has made in the election. And so somebody needs to perform on that sooner rather than later. So dynamically, the budget is being attacked from different forces, but the prime minister is on a roll. And I think you're going to see a dynamic inflection point here. We're already seeing it just this last week. There's a lot to talk about what's happened just this last week that influences policy, it influences geopolitics and the relationship between Japan and the United States and South Korea and many of its neighbors. Let me wrap up there, turn it over to you, Maya, and then get back into the beef of each of the issues I'd like to talk about today.
Thank you, Timothy. And I have two announcements to make today. The very first one is...
I love it when your microphone is off.
It is on.
Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's me?
It's you. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, the first announcement is about an event that is going to take place tomorrow. And well, here in Tokyo, in Ebisu, basically it is organized and organized by YCAPS and organized by Japan. Sponsored by Japan Expert Insights. Well, it is an event that will talk about immigration policies and about more multicultural Japan. So if you have time at 6 o'clock tomorrow, please join us because it is going to happen, start at 6 o'clock, and there will be a panel discussion where Timothy will be talking as well, but the moderator will be Martin Fackler, and also we'll have academics and other people on the panel. We'll have Miss Naoko Hashimoto, Mr. Toshihiko Yamamoto, and Yu Korekawa. So please, if you have time, join us at What the Dickens Pub in Yabisu at 6 o'clock. No registration is required. You can just show up at 6 or maybe 6:30 as well, or 7 o'clock, depending on your schedule. And the second announcement I want to make is about the movie night on the 24th of February. It is the week after this one, which just started today. And we will let you know what movie we are going to watch once we have the program clear for ourselves as well. So, Timothy, apologies for keeping you off the screen, but yeah, it's time for us to hear the details of what happened last week.
Thank you very much, Maya. So movie night is on Tuesday. Monday's a national holiday. Don't forget, the Prime Minister, the Diet goes into session on Wednesday. The Prime Minister will be reaffirmed. They will have a vote. I guess with the supermajority, we can look forward to Takeichi being reelected as Prime Minister. So there's a lot going on now. The 2/3 majority signals a lot of different things. It's a supermajority. Everybody understands that. And it means that the lower house can override the upper house's decisions with waiting 30 days. So they would give the upper house 30 days to consider a bill. If the upper house says, we don't like what you gave to us, they can say, go fly a kite, go sit in the corner because we, holding a supermajority in the lower house, are going to override your disdain for what we've proposed to you, and we're going to pass it anyway. It controls every standing committee. When you have a supermajority, you don't have to share. And this is one of the things that prevented the LDP from really moving smoothly during the extraordinary diet session, where the Constitutional Democratic Party chairman held one of the committee seats, and he held things up so that they couldn't move through. They couldn't acknowledge Osaka as a maybe a secondary capital. They couldn't do a lot of the things that the LDP promised Ishin to do because it was jammed by somebody who wasn't in the LDP, who wasn't in Ishin. He was in the Constitutional Democratic Party and just stopped everything. That slate is clean now. It sets it allows the LDP to set the legislative agenda, and it determines how the budget will flow. So currently, the diet goes into session on Wednesday. That's the 18th. They're supposed to pass the budget and give it to the upper house. So the upper house has 30 days to consider it and then either pass it or pass it back down to the lower house for reconsideration. And that must happen. The budget must pass on April 1st. So the lower house has less than 2 weeks to do that. That's just astounding. With the supermajority, though, I imagine you can get a lot done that normally you wouldn't be able to get done. But the LDP really now wields real power. The 66 brand new LDP members in the last election, these are members who just won. They don't know how diet politics works, how they don't know where the bathrooms are. So 66 brand new members, that's what the LDP won in new membership. These guys need to know how to act, how to walk, what to do, where to go. They need to train their staff. In the past, the factions were responsible for training these members. So if you wanted to be a member, you were a lawyer, or you were an author, or you had family money and you decided you wanted to get into politics, you would normally go beseech a politician in one of the factions and say, I'd like to run in this district. I'd like for your support and helping me win that seat. And the LDP would say, yes, Mr. Faction member, please support that person. He's already been vetted by us. You support him, we'll support him. And if we win, then he will become a member of the parliament. But please, he will be a member of your faction. I mean, it's his choice, but probably he will. It's your responsibility to train him. That faction system, unless you're in the ASO faction, has disappeared. So that's 1 in 5 of the members of the LDP are brand new. So I don't think it's going to revert to the recreation of the faction system, but these guys who now are in a position of authority within the parliament owe an allegiance to somebody that helped them. And it's more likely maybe Ms. Takaichi or somebody within the realm of LDP bigwigs. They need to get trained. And when they get trained, it takes maybe a year, 2 years for them to kind of rise up. Maybe they'll win their next election via Ninensei, and committee seats and maybe vice ministerial positions begin after their 4th election or 5th election. So bringing these guys up to speed is a heavy responsibility, and it continues to blend and meld this relationship between the teacher and the student. So it's an open book about how this is going to roll out within the LDP. I don't think it means that people are going to be drifting towards Mr. Aso's faction, the last remaining faction. I think more likely it is a coalescence under the LDP, under the rubric of the LDP, but we don't know yet. The other interesting thing is, you remember the Unification Church that created this whole brouhaha. Because of the Unification Church, former Prime Minister Abe was assassinated. The structure of factions collapsed. They disappeared. Many members who were receiving money and not reporting it to tax authorities either resigned or they they had to sign a promise not to be involved in party politics or committee seats. They would just take a back seat and they would rest for a year. And maybe if there was an election, they would be re-blessed. Some of them actually lost their seats when Mr. Ishiba called for an election. Of those 33 or so members that were tainted with that, 30, I think 31 or 30 of them are now members of the parliament. So it's kind of like yesterday's news. Yes, there was the Unification Church. It was a nasty thing, and the LDP is so involved in money politics. But Sanai Takaichi is going to fix that. She's going to have fiscal responsibility, and she's going to have a clean government. Those things don't quite match, but like I said before, the electorate is somewhat fickle, and just because of the timing, and I think you have to give a lot of credit to Ms. Takaichi for pulling off this win. A lot of the scars, a lot of the bruises from the past, they're just forgotten. You know, it just the most important thing right now for the LDP is don't get indigestion because of the new members. Figure that one out. But also, you need to maintain, discipline in how votes are cast and who is, talking to who and what the opposition party is doing. So we're in a range of flux with how things are going to be considered. But the diet will start on Wednesday. Everything begins anew, and we have to watch how this unfolds. So thank you very much for tuning in. If you like what you are hearing and participating, please hit the like button so that we know that you're here and that you're enjoying this. But now, if we take a look at the opposition, the Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito, they fell into bed not because of emotional coherence, it was a tactical alignment. The voters read that. They didn't like it. They looked at the two pictures of the two leaders, old, frumpy guys compared to Takaichi, who is younger, and more pleasing to the eye. And also, she's much more dynamic. There's a lot of chemistry that's going into that. They just couldn't pull it off, and I think the voters, it just didn't resonate with them. Ishin, on the other hand, their leverage shrank. Their position remained somewhat stable, but their positioning improved. The LDP doesn't hate them. It doesn't say, look, since we have 2/3 of them, the majority, we don't need you guys anymore. Actually, I think Ms. Takaichi's being a little bit generous with them. She met with the leader of Ishin just this last week and promised that Ishin would get um, a cabinet seat as a consequence of what they've been doing over the last couple of months. She doesn't need to do that, and she's not going to do it immediately. When the diet opens, the entire, from what we understand, the entire cabinet will move in mass. It'll be the same cabinet as before. They haven't had a time to be tested. They were only in their position less than 3 months before the election was called. So I think the right thing to do is keep that cabinet. I don't expect we're going to see any changes, but we could. She has held off opening the diet for 10 days. The election was a week ago today, and she didn't immediately open the diet. She didn't immediately reassert herself as prime minister. She didn't announce anything about the cabinet positioning. She gave it 10 days. So there's also something that's going on there. But the point here is that Ishin did come out looking pretty well. And at the same time, you might recall that the ballot for governor was also on the same day. So the governor of Osaka decided to resign and align his election to be, or the campaign to end on the same day as the lower house election. So if you're in Osaka, it was a double election. You walked in, you voted for members of the lower house, but you also voted for governor and for mayor of Osaka. Yoshimura, Governor Yoshimura came back. He did exceedingly well. There was 56% turnout for the vote. He received more than 3 million votes. That's like 83% of the people who voted for him. So I think he's got a lot of wind in his sails. he still needs to push this referendum of making Osaka a metropolis. It's not a metropolis. It's a governorship. It's a city. They're not blended together. Osaka is unlike Japan or like Tokyo. Tokyo is a metropolis. The governor of Tokyo is also the mayor of the entire city. So that's Miss Koike. They want to make the same thing so that the argument that Osaka is the secondary capital actually has meaning to it. It's not as fragmented as it currently is, and that's one of the promises he made to the population of Osaka. This is his third time to try and pass this referendum, so it's not a marginal win for him. This is a big deal. And I think the referendum, if it is revived, and passes, Osaka changes permanently. It becomes more centralized, it's more investment friendly, and potentially more competitive as a secondary national hub. So now we have to ask the political question: why would the LDP offer Ishin a cabinet seat? Likely later in this year. It's not going to happen this week. I think the discussion is let's push it into the fall. Um, it doesn't need them numerically, but it does provide the LDP insulation. It's not just arithmetic, but it's about firming up the LDP in light of potential missteps or mistakes or attacks from the opposition party. And also, it firms up just a tiny bit in the upper house. So the upper house is not controlled by the LDP, far from it. Even bringing in Ishin doesn't solve that problem. But the two-thirds majority sure is a piece of medicine that solves a lot of different problems. So I think the Ishin has pretty much identified who would be the member to sit as a cabinet official. I don't want to go too far out because it's early and a lot can happen. But I think they've already identified who that individual would be. We don't know what cabinet seat it would be, but this is a pretty big deal. So, with regard to the political calendar, the diet opens this week. The prime minister will be reaffirmed, and the cabinet largely remains intact. And then the sprint begins. 3 weeks, and the lower house must pass the budget that it considers. It's probably ready to go, and even if it's not, just push it through to the upper house. The upper house has 30 days to consider it. But that's an extraordinarily short period of time for the lower house to consider it. But the end result is if the upper house tweaks it or doesn't like it, the lower house can just say, go forget it. This is structural leverage that now the LDP holds in its hands. It hasn't had it. Gosh, I mean, you can almost say even Mr. Abe didn't have this much power, this much strength to move things forward. So there's plenty to be enthusiastic and hopeful about. If you believe that Takaichi as prime minister is bold and says what she means and is fiscally responsible and is going to achieve things that she's determined to achieve, she has the machinery to do that. So I think she has the flexibility of being a little bit kind to Ishin, also to the people that were defeated and lost their seats. I think you're going to see a lot of what's the word, graciousness in her moving things forward. But she's farther on the right side of the political spectrum. There are some people in the LDP that don't like that are fighting against her. Mr. Ishiba actually went on TV just this last week and said the consumption tax on foodstuffs, what is she thinking about? It's not fiscally responsible. So you've got some people that are poo-hooing what she wants to do. The proof will come in the pudding. So let's see how that comes out. Former finance minister was Mr. Suzuki Shinichi. He is a member of the ASO faction. The finance ministry belonged to ASO for many years. He was the longest serving finance minister. When he turned it over, he gave it to his brother-in-law, Mr. Suzuki, and Mr. Suzuki held it for several years, and then he turned it over to Satsuki Katayama, and he moved to be the Secretary General of the LDP, an extremely powerful position. So the LDP is not controlled maybe swayed a bit by the Aso faction, but I think Aso is shining in the sunshine of the prime minister's victory, because he can rightly say she's there because of me. I put her there. I made her prime minister when she was fighting against Mr. Ishiba, and although she didn't really confide in me as I thought she should, I yelled at her a couple of times. She sure did pull out the rabbit out of the hat with my help, of course. But I've got assets within the central government which will secure me. In fact, he had said earlier that if there's an election, I'm not going to run. I'm old. It's time for me to hang up the hat. And he didn't. He ran again, and of course, he won. So, Miss Katayama is a former finance ministry official. She's now finance minister, and she's not a slogan politician. She's a budget technician, but she has a problem. And this problem is not just about the yen, it's not just about the consumption tax. It's a wide range of issues that really fall in her lap. So the dynamics between her and the prime minister is going to be very important. Also, this meeting that is scheduled tomorrow for the governor of the Bank of Japan and the prime minister is going to be important. The yen closed just this last week at 152, 152.7. This is pretty amazing. Markets feared fiscal expansion and uncertain rate signals, but then it came roaring back. So maybe earlier this week, the yen was closing at around 155. Then in midweek, it was 154. By Friday, it was 152. So that's a 3% move in just 1 week. So this is the strongest weekly yen rally in about 15 months. So it's something to watch. When you watch the yen, it's kind of like a barometer read about what the markets are thinking about, what is coming down, how things look fiscally from kind of a broad economic perspective. So it is a signal. It doesn't say everything, but we always watch the yen, and it could tell us the 152 number right now that there's a possible additional Bank of Japan tightening sooner than expected, and so the meeting tomorrow is important, and that there's always political clarity after the election. So this is going to start to roll out a little bit more for us to, as we read the tea leaves, what it means. So money flows towards currencies where investors believe interest rates may rise or stability improves. So that's why you're always hearing people talk about the stability that the two-thirds majority gives, but also the personality of this prime minister. So that affects, what the markets feel about the currency. So currency stability intersects directly with consumption tax debate, which is really the hot button issue now. 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we wouldn't have even considered it, but became a campaign issue that the LDP jumped on. So it came up initially from the Democratic Party for the People. We support consumption tax rebate or cancellation. So the LDP had to jump in and capture that meme, and they did, and they made some commitments. So it's currently the LDP seems to have made a pledge for a 2-year suspension of the consumption tax. So consumption tax on food is at 8%, and that would go from 8% to 0. The other consumption tax is pegged at 10%, as you know. So that combined amount of revenue that the government anticipates is about 5 trillion yen per year. That means 10 trillion yen over 2 years, and that is huge. 5 trillion yen is roughly equivalent to the same amount of money that Japan promised to increase the defense budget by. They were 1% of GDP we're going to dedicate to defense expenditures. And then Mr. Who was it? It wasn't Mr. Abe. The prime minister promised the United States we will increase the amount of money we spend on defense from 1% to 2% for 5 years. And that increase is about 5 trillion yen from 1% to 2% every year. That's a huge hole that needs to be filled by the finance Katayama. How is she going to do that? It's not a rounding error. She has to buy 5 trillion yen per year without issuing debt. And that means reforming subsidies, identifying non taxable revenue, and reallocating expenditures. We've been through this before. It's like squeezing and squeezing, and how much blood can you get out of a rock? But there's urgency here because the bond markets are watching. And if the bond market is kind of the bellwether. If the bond markets start to vibrate and anticipate, and the rates start to increase, the money flows someplace else, and it shows up. It first comes up in the bond market, but it reveals itself in the value of the yen. So the borrowing costs would increase, the debt servicing costs increase, the yen can weaken even further as it kind of tumbles upon itself. So we saw this happen in the UK actually during the Truss episode, and Japan just can't afford that kind of dynamic. So Akazawa in Washington D.C. talking with Lutnick, $550 billion of trade and investment from Japan to the United States. It's still in committee. Actually, it's undecided how that's going to be distributed. And the bond market is watching. The yen value is reacting to that, and people are just wondering, how this prime minister is going to do in this kind of a situation. It's not an easy situation, but let's see how it goes. So, with the prime minister, she meets with the Bank of Japan chairman tomorrow. There are 2 policy seats that are becoming available. One of them is in March, which is just around the corner, and the other one is in June. These replacements are elected or decided by a committee within the prime minister's office. You could say that it's the prime minister's call, and not be too inaccurate about that. But the first nominee will be submitted to the Diet probably later this month in February. But if markets perceive that the new appointment is kind of excessively dovish or excessively hawkish, the yen will react to that. So all eyes are on that. And if it's perceived as disciplined and gradual, stability continues and the yen further strengthens. So this is something to keep an eye on. Policy synchronization between Conte and the Bank of Japan is delicate right now. So that's why we're watching it. The other thing is the $550 billion investment that Japan committed to Donald Trump. It could go. I don't know. There are some things to figure out about it. The problem here is that you can't get into a fist fight. There can't be a fist fight between Akazawa and Mr. Lutnick, Commerce Secretary Lutnick, because the prime minister is going to be in Washington, D.C. on the 19th of March. This is a big deal. This is her first trip to the United States as prime minister. This is a very big deal. So they're going to try and smooth that out. They're going to hammer it out. I think the president of the United States needs to give Japan a bit of a breather and an acknowledgement of this victory of the LDP. A strong, stable Japan benefits the United States. It benefits the region. So I think you can see maybe a U.S.-Japan investment framework coming up strong, or at least a victory for Japan, or perceived as an equal win. But it involves gas projects, port facilities, and strategic industrial inputs, embellishing the U.S. economy, but profit sharing with Japan as well. But the sticking points are what's the risk allocation, the profit sharing, and the government backstops. And if these talks stall, tariffs could re-enter the conversation before the March 19th summit. I don't think it's going to happen like that. The other thing that's very electric that's happened just over the last couple of days is the Chinese fishing vessel that invaded is the wrong word, that broached Japan's exclusive economic zone south of Nagasaki, quite a bit south. But still, the boat was chased by, not by the self-defense forces, but by the coastal fisheries operation. They have authority over, policing. It's not the self-defense forces. If it was the self-defense forces, and maybe there was self-defense forces vehicles shadowing the policing by the fisheries, but they didn't board. The fisheries boarded the Chinese boat. They arrested the captain and they brought the ship back into to port. This is really delicate. The last time this happened was in 2010, a long time ago, and it created an enormous brouhaha between Japan and China. We don't need that sort of thing at this particular point in time. But this one is a lot different. The vessel broached Japan exclusive economic zone in an area that is uncontested. In 2010, it was in contested waters. Japan moved. It was the self-defense forces that moved in. So it was a little bit more aggressive at that point in time. I think the Chinese have not really launched an aggressive response to that. The captain was arrested, he was detained, he was released overnight, and the boat left. They have a penalty imposed upon them, but it's not. I think they're playing this one so that it doesn't blow out of proportion. But it is a significant thing that after the prime minister said, what 6 or 8 weeks ago, the comment that if China moves aggressively on Taiwan, it's an existential threat to Japan, which it is, and that really made tensions rise. Actually, it's not as tense as you might expect. So this boarding of the boat and the arrest of the captain, I think it's just one of those things. The flights, the incursions of the Chinese Air Force and the vessels, the military vessel, the naval vessels, has actually diminished over the last week. It's at the lowest point that it's been in 2 or 3 years. So certainly something is going on there. You know that with Premier Z, Chairman Z, he also released some of his military executives as well, the most powerful ones. So something's going on there. But this time, I think it's a measured response by Japan, by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, by the self-defense forces to stay back, to exercise, territorial dominion, and just to move it forward. But let's see how that moves forward. The fishery exports from Japan to China were about 87 billion in 2022, and then there were restrictions and bans. You're releasing tainted water into the Pacific. We don't like you anymore. We're not going to eat any more of your fish. That market collapsed from 87 billion to 6 billion in 2024. It's improved a little bit, but it's a stunning contraction from 87 to 6. I mean, that's huge. Agriculture and food exports to China more broadly fell roughly 29% at one point, down to 168 billion before a partial recovery, and I think it's at around 180 billion now. So if you're the finance minister, if you're the prime minister, if you're anybody that's trying to evaluate and collect funding and money here, these are very big issues, and so maybe that inflects on how the captain of the fishing vessel was treated. With regard to tourism, tourism is a big money get for Japan. Japan welcomed 42.7 million visitors in 2025, an enormous increase, and the largest in Japanese history, of course, but an enormous increase from 2024. There was roughly 9.5 trillion in yen in inbound spending. The Chinese kind of backed off on that. They dropped 45% in December, just 2 months ago, and it's falling now before about 10% of the total. So that keeps Ms. Katayama awake at night because 5 trillion is the annual tax gap. The seafood exports collapse, Chinese tourism contracts, and it creates a volatile yen all at once. So it creates a really interesting mix if you're into Japanese politics. All of these things mean something, and collectively they have an impact. So moving forward, things to watch. The diet opens on Wednesday. Look for committee assignments. Those will probably tumble out on Wednesday, Thursday, more likely Thursday or Friday. Some comment about the appointment of the cabinet. I think it will happen rather quickly, and the prime minister will be off and running. The tone of the meeting with the Bank of Japan governor tomorrow, whether the consumption tax funding specifics emerge this next week, it could. whether China escalates or remains calibrated, and whether the yen stabilizes at the low 150s. So this is really a powerful moment in Japan's history, and I think all of us can feel that. We're all very interested in it, but this power needs to be managed. It needs to be modulated very carefully. The election delivered leverage, but now comes the execution. I don't have all the answers, and our audience consists of a lot of really area-specific Japan hands. So questions and issues that come up, please share them. Write to Maya, give her a note. I will respond to the best of my ability, but once again, I don't have all the answers. I do this every day. I have some good insights. Sometimes I'm spot on, but I'm open to criticism and I'm open to being corrected. So this is a time for you two to participate. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. For those of you who have been here for 262 times every Sunday. I really appreciate it. Maya and I get a real charge out of it. Not much money, but it's something that we believe in and it's something that we're very passionate about. And we appreciate your passion and interest too. So let me tie that up now and pass it over to Maya. Let's get into the bones of this briefing in our very spicy Q&A session. Maya?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Timothy. Yes. And I would say that the briefing itself was spicy too. So thank you for making it tasty. All
Thank
right.
you.
So we start with the questions once again that came very, very early this morning. I know everybody who has been with us for a while knows who those questions come from. Please forgive me for starting with them, but today we will follow the chronological order of posting all those comments. And of course, I'll try probably to group some of them based on the topic they are on, but let's see how it goes. And the very first question from Byron is, the LDP did not have enough PR nominees for the number of PR seats they won, so had to hand over some seats to other parties. To which parties did they hand over, and what is the methodology used to hand over seats?
So the PR, just so everybody knows, there are two election districts in the lower house. One is the single seat where you run on your name and other people run on their names and vote for me because I'm handsomer, I'm more experienced, I can do this for you. And then the other one is you vote for the party list. And the names are listed by the individual parties. So, for example, the Constitutional Democratic Party, which is now the central party, with it's joined by the Komeito and the former Constitutional Democratic Party. They have a list of candidates whose names that they put in there, and depending on how many votes that party gets, it checks off some of the names. And that's what Byron is talking about. The LDP is interesting because when they decided to have a snap election, gearing yourself up, preparing yourself, preparing your staff and your family and your company, whatever, to run. I'm going to run in the election. Yeah, we heard you talk about that. Yeah, but it's going to be in 2 weeks or something like that. Yeah, the LDP tried to jump and fill that gap. They weren't that successful. They just don't have the numbers. Other people who are running on their own volition, uh, it's probably a little bit more difficult. If you run on the proportional representation, you're riding on the coattails of the party. They could, I think what Byron is getting at is they could have won more based on the popularity. So the popularity of Ms. Takaichi going into the election was around 70%. The popularity of the LDP was lower, but it was still above 50%, maybe around 60 or 55%. So that means all things being equal, and they never are, all things being equal, the LDP on the proportional side will get the lion's share of the proportional representation. They need to share maybe 40% with the opposition parties. They didn't have the numbers to share to load that list with. The Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito is the more interesting discussion here. Mr. Noda brought the Komeito together. Let's fight together. At some point in time, the prime minister is going to call an election. We need to prepare. We need to protect ourselves. Let's form a coalition. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to have a coalition. It's a little bit early. There's been no election called. Okay, I tell you what, if you agree to have this coalition with us, when it comes time for an election, your guys will get the list, will be on the top of the list, and my guys will get lower on the list. So, what do you think about that? And that was the basis of the agreement. And then the prime minister called for the snap election. They were caught. They weren't prepared, but the promise was already made. So now the Constitutional Democratic Party and the Komeito, they're coming together, but they're fighting because who in the hell, Mr. Noda, what in the hell did you do? A lot of my friends lost because you gave those seats. They're gimmies. They're easy seats. You gave those to the Komeito just so that you could bring some sort of a closure. And now we're sucking wind. We have less than 10 collectively. We have 10% of the diet. We're not going to control anything. You made a huge mistake. So yes, they elected a new leader on Friday. Both of these guys, the leader of Komeito, the leader of the Constitutional Democratic Party, resigned as a consequence of the tremendous loss that they had. But boy, you're talking about Ms. Takaichi pulling off a magnificent win. That's one of the things she did. Nobody expected her to call for that snap election. Once we came out of New Year, and we knew that the diet was going to open up later in January, not early in January, everybody sat back and started smoking a cigarette and talking and jawboning with their colleagues. And then 5 days later, she decided to, wow, what an earth shattering thing to happen. So I don't know if that addresses specifically Byron's question. Byron's question is, the LDP didn't have people to put into their proportional representation. So where did those seats go? Yeah, I think you have to look at how how people voted. The Constitution. Not so many people voted for Constitutional Democratic Party, for Ishin, for the Democratic Party for the People, for the Communists. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that, but I hope that that explanation describes what that dynamic is when you're running for a seat in the parliament. You've got the single seat and the proportional representation. The members who actually win the proportional representation seat are a little bit lower in status than the guys that win from their own name recognition. So there's a lot of horse trading that goes on there.
Right, and we've got a snapshot shot from Chiba. So Rick, thank you very much for sharing these numbers. So Rick Gundlach says Narita City's proportional numbers were the following: LDP 43%, Trudeau 70.6%, Democratic Party for the People 9.8%, Sanseito 7.7%, Team Mirai 6.6%. Japan Innovation and other opposition parties had the rest. The district seat in that area, which is LDP Chiba 10th, got 68% of the vote, 25% ahead of the LDP. About half of eligible voters did not vote. If median voter, as in Japan and Narita, is about 55 years old, not much ringing support for the LDP. Yes. So
And the other important part of those numbers is, even if you have 25% of the vote, it might not eclipse getting a proportional representation seat, because you only have 5 people who are on the list, and if you only get 25%, maybe those seats have already been distributed before you're 25. It doesn't mean you get 25% of the proportional representation.
Right. So there is another interesting comment from Rick, and I'll read it out before I move on to the second question from Byron. But it is, Rick writes, I saw on ANN news that the new Trudeau had a young 54-year-old representative, Junya Ogawa from Shikoku, who starred in the documentary Why You Cannot Be Prime Minister, is already having the personal attacks or concerns hit him about being emotional and once saying that a European style safety net costs 25% consumption tax, not just 10. Last year, the Democratic Party for the People, the head Tamaki, got smeared for a marital affair. The runners of things in Japan are already trying to buffer the two-third power by knifing any, sorry, I cannot, yes, anybody around them, I believe, any front runners.
Yes, we've seen this before. And it is true that the consumption tax, based on the European model, it needs to be much more than 10%. But the economy just can't handle it. They would love to get more revenue out of people who spend money and they consume things. But inflation is so high already, they just can't do it. So it's a delicate dance on the blade of a knife that they're dancing. And sometimes they slip up and you see it in the economic numbers. So it's a very, very delicate thing. This idea about forgiving or suspending the consumption tax, that's drastic. So I think you can depend on Miss Takaichi to be decisive, bold, and doing things that are unanticipated. I think, like I said earlier, she's taking a page from Donald Trump. Keep people on their toes. Don't let everything out of the bag, but be dynamic and move forward and be aggressive and have the conviction of your spirit. Which means, if that is true, that another visit to Yasukuni is potentially in store, and also this movement on revising the Constitution very definitely is in store. We don't know what the rollout is, but I think we can anticipate that.
Right, yes. Okay, thank you. And moving on to the next question. As was discussed last week in response to my question, LDP got the supermajority it sought. The CDP, the Constitutional Democratic Party, and Komeito combo was decimated. Now there is unhappiness among defeated Constitutional Democratic members of Parliament that a higher number of proportional representation seats were given to Komeito nominees. The CRA thus will likely not last. Might some of the unhappy CRA personnel move over to the Democratic Party for the People, Tamaki? What do you think?
Uh, Repeat that last question.
Do you think that some of the unhappy member personnel, let's say people or members of the new party, CRA, is
Yeah.
it likely for them to move over to Tamaki's Democratic Party for the People?
Yes. Thank you very much, Byron. Um, I I think so. Yes. So the lower house vote was Sunday, and in order to have people lined up, Komeito and the Constitutional Democratic Party came together, and the proportional representation, you get that, and then on this part here, we're going to run a candidate here, and you run a candidate over there. So this kind of amalgamation, like the agreement that they had with the LDP. I'm going to run a candidate here, and you don't, because you run a candidate there, and I won't. They just didn't have the time to do that, and in the upper house, they didn't even they didn't meld like that. The
Mm.
various caucuses in the Constitutional Democratic Party and in Komeito in the upper house still remain like this. So it's not a unitary blend. Everything happens so quickly. So yes, I think the prediction, it's not going to last. They don't have the gel. They don't have the juice. They don't have the leadership. The new leader has not had time to pull anything together. And he's like everybody else. He's got a couple of skeletons in the closet. People will pick that out. It'll only be a matter of time. But many people think it's great for democracy to have a kind of a two-party system. We've got like an eight-party system in Japan, but the LDP is so dominant. But a lot of people wish that the opposition parties could somehow come together. They tried this time and they failed miserably. It will be a decade. It will be at least a decade before they can get their act together. I think the prime minister is going to be avoiding scandal and mistakes. I think she will govern very graciously, and I think you're going to see Ms. Takaichi as prime minister for quite a while.
Right. Okay, let's see what happens there. And as Rick said, I believe that it is related to the second question of Byron. So the opposition in the national diet in Japan has basically been reduced to something that will look like a group of hecklers. Yes, it is what it is, indeed. And then
Yeah.
also, yes, another comment from Rick is that former Prime Minister Aso seems like one of the people who really runs the country from the shadows, and so he didn't run
As
in the election
usual.
as usual, right? But when we come to people who didn't win a seat. So we've got a Peter Pan comment here, and he says, "I'm glad that Ion Okada got the boot, the guy that caused all the mess with China. He didn't register for the proportional representation seat." Yes, obviously there were some losers there as well. I believe it's all because of their own doing. And let me go to the next question here.
But also, while we're on that, that was from Peter Pan.
Yes.
Okay, so there are other members who lost their seats one way or the other, who are now diet members. And I mentioned that there of the 33 or so who were tainted with the Unification Church scandal, the money there. 30 or 31 of them came back, and there are some names that we're very familiar with who have come back as a member of the parliament. Mr. Shimomura, Hakabun Shimomura, was once the Minister of Education, very close to Mr. Abe, one of the leaders of the Abe faction in the absence of Mr. Abe. So he's back in the parliament, and I think he will do a yeah. I think he resigned, or he was. I think he was. He just lost his election. Um, but he's back in power now, or he's got his seat back. There are a couple like that that I think just solidify and make the LDP even stronger. These aren't the new ones. These aren't the 66 new members. These guys have been in. They know how to do things. They made a gamble. They lost the gamble. They lost their seat, but they're back. And when people generally go through that kind of an ordeal, they come back more dedicated, stronger, more determined. So I think this all bodes well for us.
All right, since we are we moved into this direction, I want to read another question before I move to the next one. So from Manabe-san, we've got: is there a possibility for Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries to be replaced?
Sure. Yeah. What's behind that comment?
Oh well, I don't know at the moment. So
Who's it from?
Manabe-san,
Oh yeah, okay. Manabe, he's following this stuff carefully.
very carefully. Yes, yes. Okay, yes. Obviously, there
Um,
is. Yeah.
I think maybe what Manabe-san is getting to is Ishin is going to get a cabinet seat. Is it going to be fisheries? Um, is it going to be labor or trade or construction? Right?
Right, yes. That's the Ministry of Land Infrastructure
And
and
tourism.
yes,
That's right. One of the big ones. The one that was always given to Komeito.
it was, yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
But I think farm and fisheries is being led by a very prominent, very experienced, formerly farm and fisheries bureaucrat. So,
Oh, he is
um,
the young person who resolved the problem with the rice. No, am I mistaken?
well, no, you're right, but the issue isn't resolved, and it wasn't done by um, you know uh, the earlier minister. I mean, there was a little bit of a resolution there, but it didn't really solve the problem. That problem still persists.
Well, it
But
does indeed.
yeah, So I don't think that is grounds for him to be dismissed as minister. I think that's why I'd like to understand a little bit better what Manabe-san is getting at.
Right. Well, my take is that if he is replaced by somebody else, he will probably get another portfolio,
He's
ministerial
a good,
portfolio.
yeah, he's a
Yes,
good penny. Yeah.
yes, indeed. All right, and then moving on to the next question from Byron. In the immediate post-war World War II era, there were large steps taken to reduce the debt overhang. Might this current era see some fraction of those steps to ensure that the financial world regards Japanese debt as sustainable?
Yeah, I don't know. That's
Mm, that's
yeah,
a tough
that's
question.
yeah, that's I mean, I hope we have somebody in the audience that can contribute to that because I would just be pretending like I know what I'm talking about as usual.
As usual, making it up on the go. Yes,
Yes.
right.
So
Yeah,
sorry, Byron. I really don't have much heat and light to shed on that.
yeah, I still believe that there will be. I mean, everybody is. I'm not a specialist, of course, but from conversations I have listened to from people or among people who are in this field, the financial field, there is still tension between the BOJ, the Bank of Japan, and the government because the Bank of Japan does want to increase the rates.
Yeah.
But well, going really fast in that direction is going to destabilize the country. And I'm not saying anything that people don't know. It's an obvious struggle there. The question is once again, how much will the government be able to do without or in collaboration with the Bank of Japan when they have two different, let's say, not agendas really, but
Yeah.
well, their goals are different in a sense, a certain sense of the word.
Well,
So,
it's inescapable. How do you fill a 5 trillion yen hole?
right, yes, indeed. Okay, so if somebody can help us with more information about that, people working in finance, please feel free to chime in because we appreciate all the help we get and we can get. As Timothy said in the beginning, we don't know it all. We are not, people who can give all the questions. So, and it's a forum, it's a community where everybody is welcome to talk and share their experience and their opinion as well. Okay, and with this, yes, Timothy, I think that we have just finished the questions and comments. I know that you're very happy about this, so
Well,
that
I'm
you
I'm
can go
reporting
about
from
your
my home
morning.
office. I'm not on the good ship Grim, so I'm not eager to push off. But it is a beautiful day outside. Yesterday and today were just gorgeous. The temperature's going to fall down again this next week. But we've got what? Today is the 15th. We've got 2 more weeks before we're into March. So there's
Yes,
a lot to look forward to.
yeah, and we are almost running towards the cherry blossom season, right? So
Yes.
yes, I believe that everybody who is in Japan and maybe out of Japan as well is looking forward to this part of the year. Okay, once again, allow me to repeat that on the 24th of February, we're going to have the movie night. Of course, as we mentioned before, we're looking to have or to watch basically Kokuho. But if we cannot find the movie theater with it, then it will be a different movie. So please give us some flexibility. And also tomorrow, 6
What the
o'clock at
dickens?
What the Dickens in Ebisu, there will be a discussion about immigration policies and multicultural Japan. If your schedule allows, please come over. Let's meet in person there again. Let's talk. Let's have beer together. And, well, we'll
No,
move
no food
forward.
fight.
No food fight. Well, at least at this point of time. Who
And
knows
and
what?
just to put a brief plug in there, people ask me all the time, and it comes up here on our program from time to time. Hey, Langley, I was walking down the street, and then this Japanese guy accosted me, and this has never happened to me in my many years in Japan. I've never been accosted, and I've never been told we don't have no foreigners are allowed in this shop. And you're beginning to see this a little bit. So what the hell's going on? We get that from time to time. And we get that more and more since the upper house election and San Sato coming in and saying, negative things about foreigners and their inclusion into Japanese society, and the LDP picking that up and kind of making noise about, the influx of foreigners, and then we see what's going on in Italy and the United States and in Great Britain. So I think there's something that's going on there. Anyway, this discussion at What the Dickens tomorrow is about that whole realm. So if you're thirsty and you're interested in the topic, please come and join us.
All right. Yes, please do. And yeah, that's all for the moment. And we're going to see you again, I hope, next week at 8:20 or maybe later on Sunday when Timothy will be reporting from where. We don't know that yet. So please join us to see that as well. Okay.
I can't
Have a great
wait.
day. I
Thank
cannot
you very
wait
much.
either. Thank you very
Thanks,
much
Maya.
and enjoy the week ahead as well.